Welcome to Fasken's 14th consecutive mining series. My name is Michael Barassa, and I'm part of the Fasken Global Mining Group, and I'm also a partner here in the Toronto office. Today's webinar, the Fraser Institute, Canada's #1 think tank, shares the results of their annual mining survey, is the second in our series of 14 seminars this year. A calendar of all of Fasken's PDAC events can be found underneath the video window. Please refer to the slide on your screen for some housekeeping items. And with that, now I'm going to turn it over to our speaker for today's session, Elmira Aliakbari. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Hello, everyone. As Michael just mentioned, my name is Elmira Aliakbari. I'm the Director of Natural Resources Studies at the Fraser Institute. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to be here today to present the latest results of our mining survey, which is for the year 2023. Every year, the Fraser Institute survey mining investors around the world to find out which jurisdictions are attractive or unattractive for mining investment based on government policies and mineral endowment. So we have done the survey since 1997. And today I'll be presenting the latest results, which is for the year 2023. We haven't published these results yet, and we are planning to release them in the coming weeks. But today I'll be presenting those results to you. Before I start my presentation, I just want to provide some additional information about the session. You can download the handout by clicking the Session Materials tab. For more information about Fasken, you can click the Brochures tab. If you have any questions for me, please put your questions into the Q&A box and I'll answer those questions at the end. You can also click on the Survey tab to complete Fasken's survey. If you have any feedback about the presentation, you can fill out the survey to provide your feedback. If you require support, please click the Tech Support button at the bottom of the video window page. And to turn on closed captioning, you can click on the CC button under the video window. Next slide, please. So before I start talking about the survey and what we found last year, I just want to give you a quick overview of the mining industry so that we better understand its importance to the Canadian economy. This sector is a vital part of our economy, employing a significant number of Canadians across the country. In 2021, this sector employed 665,000 Canadians across the country, with 61% of them being directly employed and the remaining 39% being indirectly employed. Jobs in this sector come with high-paying salaries. In 2021, the sector paid an annual average salary of $134,000 per job, which was nearly twice the all-industry average of $69,000. This sector is also an important contributor to Canada's capital investment. In 2021, the sector spent $14.4 billion in new capital construction, machinery, and equipment, accounting for 5% of the Canadian total. Similarly, in 2021, the sector exported $130.4 billion worth of minerals. So according to this data that I collected from the government website, it is clear that the mining industry is an important contributor to our economy. And that's why we should really care about the health and competitiveness of this sector. Next slide. So before I talk about the results that we found last year, I just want to give you a quick background on the survey in case you are not really familiar with the survey and you haven't followed it in the past. So since 1997, the Fraser Institute has conducted the mining survey annually. to assess how government policies and mineral endowments affect investment decisions. Our survey spotlights policies such as taxation and regulations that govern the mining industry and affect investment decisions. Our purpose is to create a report card that governments can use to improve their mining-related policies so that they can attract more investment in their jurisdictions. In addition, individuals in the mining industry and the investment sector also find our survey useful to assess their potential investment decisions. Last year, we circulated our survey electronically to 2,045 individuals in mining companies around the world and received 293 responses, providing us sufficient data to evaluate and rank 86 jurisdictions around the world. We conducted the survey between August 16, 2023 and January 9, 2024. In terms of the methodology and what we do in this survey, we first ask respondents to answer to 15 questions pertaining to policy factors that affect investment decisions. Those policy factors include the uncertainty concerning environmental regulations, trade barriers, political stability, and infrastructure. Then we collect those responses and create an index called the Policy Perception Index. This index that we create is a composite index that measures the impact of government policy on the attitudes toward exploration investment. While it's useful to assess, to see how basically the government policy affects investment decisions, we understand that investment decisions are also largely affected by a pure mineral potential of a jurisdiction. Therefore, we create a second index in our report, which is called the Best Practices Mineral Potential Index. And this index simply measures the jurisdictions based on, or rates the jurisdictions based on their pure mineral potential. The next step for us is to combine our Policy Perception Index and our Best Practices Mineral Potential Index to create our overall investment attractiveness, because we believe that both policy factors and mineral endowment are important factors to drive investment decisions. So the indexes that we create range from 0 to 100. The most attractive jurisdiction receive a score of 100, while the least attractive jurisdiction receives a score of 0. Next slide. So this figure here shows basically, it provides information about our respondents. In particular, it shows the company focus as indicated by respondents. So as you can see, nearly 44% of our respondents represented an exploration company. About 35% represented a producer company. Nearly 14% represented a consulting company, and almost 8% represented other companies. Next. This figure provides additional information about our respondents. In particular, it shows the position that our respondents held in their companies. About 49%, almost 49% of our respondents were a company president. 12.3% were a vice president. 13% were a senior manager, almost 10% were a manager, and nearly 11% were a consultant. Next. So as I said earlier, we measure the impact of government policies on the attitudes toward exploration investment in our survey. We take into account 15 policy factors, which we believe those are the major policy factors that govern the mining industry and affect investment decisions. And this slide shows the full list of those policies that we include in the survey. The policies range from uncertainty concerning environmental regulations to availability of labor and skills to taxation regime to level of security. We ask respondents to indicate how each individual policy factor affects their investment decisions on a scale from 0 to 5. We then collect those responses and use those responses to create our policy perception index, which is, again, a composite index that measures the impact of government policies on investment decisions. And the indexes, again, that we create range from 0 to 100. Next slide. So this figure here shows the top 10 jurisdictions on the policy perception index. In other words, these are the jurisdictions that have the most favorable policy environment in the eyes of investors. In 2023, according to our investors, Utah was the most attractive jurisdiction for mining investment when we only consider policy factors, followed by Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Botswana. The red color in the figure is associated with Canadian jurisdictions. I wanted to differentiate the Canadian jurisdictions from others. So as you can see, there are 4 Canadian jurisdictions this year in the list of top 10 on the policy perception index. Those jurisdictions are Saskatchewan ranking 2nd, Manitoba ranking 3rd, Quebec ranking 6th, and Alberta ranking 10th. The United States also has 4 jurisdictions in the top 10, which are Utah, Nevada, Arizona, and Wyoming. Nevada and Utah are the jurisdictions that have consistently performed well in our survey in the last 5 years or so. And this year we saw that Utah displaced Nevada and became the most attractive jurisdiction in terms of mining policy. There is also one jurisdiction from Africa in the top 10, and that is Botswana. Botswana also performed really well in our survey last year. And again, we see that in 2023, Botswana appeared in the top 10 and is one of the most attractive jurisdictions in terms of mining policy. There's also one jurisdiction from Europe, and that is Finland, ranking 8th, again, out of 86 jurisdictions that we evaluated in 2023. Next slide, please. So this figure here shows the top 10 jurisdictions on the mineral potential index. So Western Australia is the most attractive jurisdiction for mining investment when we only consider mineral endowments, followed by Nevada. Northern Territory and Utah together held the 3rd ranking on the Mineral Potential Index, as these 2 jurisdictions had the exact same scores on this index. Similarly, Yukon and Salta held the 10th ranking on the Mineral Potential. Again, they both had the exact same scores on the Mineral Potential Index. Again, the red color in the figure is associated with Canadian jurisdictions. There are 4 Canadian jurisdictions in the top 10 in 2023, and those are Northwest Territories, Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Yukon. This means that in the eyes of investors, these 4 Canadian jurisdictions have really strong mineral potential. Overall, we see that Canada has 4 jurisdictions in the top 10 on the Mineral Potential Index. The United States also has 4 jurisdictions, which are Nevada, Utah, Arizona, Montana. Australia has 2 jurisdictions, which are Western Australia and Northern Territory. We also see that Argentina has 3 jurisdictions in the top 10, which are San Juan, Jujuy, and Salta. Please, next slide. So after creating our policy perception index and our mineral potential index using a common technique in statistics, we combine these two indexes to create our overall investment attractiveness because, as I said, both factors are important in driving investment decisions. When we want to combine those two indexes, we place 40% weight on policy factors and 60% weight on geology. And we got that ratio based on the responses that we've got in our survey. In our survey, we specifically ask respondents to indicate or to rate basically the relative importance of these two factors. And this is what we have been told. The investors have told us that 60% of their investment decisions are driven by geology, and 40% of their investment decisions are driven by policies. So this is the weight we use to combine our policy perception index with our mineral potential index to create our overall investment attractiveness index. Next slide, please. So this figure here shows the top 10 jurisdictions on the overall investment attractiveness index. So in 2023, according to the investors, Utah was the most attractive jurisdiction for mining investment when we take into account both policy factors and mineral endowment, followed by Nevada, Saskatchewan, and Western Australia. Again, the red color is associated with Canadian jurisdictions. As you can see, there are 5 Canadian jurisdictions in the top 10 in 2023, which are Saskatchewan ranking 3rd, Quebec ranking 5th, Manitoba ranking 6th, Newfoundland and Labrador ranking 9th, and Ontario ranking 10th. To provide more context, in 2022, when we did the survey, we only had 3 Canadian jurisdictions in the top 10, which were Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Newfoundland. But in 2023, we saw that Manitoba and Ontario improved, and they joined the list of top 10 most attractive jurisdictions for mining investment. Overall, Canada has the most jurisdictions in the top 10 in 2023. The United States has 3 jurisdictions in the top 10, which are Utah, Nevada, and Arizona. There are also 2 jurisdictions from Australia, as you can see, which are Western Australia and Northern Territory. Next slide, please. We also do some regional analysis in our survey by calculating the median scores of jurisdictions within a particular region. So this figure here shows the regional results on the policy perception index in both 2023, which is the latest results, and in 2022. So in 2023, we see that when we only focus on policy factors, Canada was the most attractive region for mining investment, followed by the United States, Australia, Europe, and Argentina. In 2023, which is associated with the red color, we see that Oceania was the least attractive region for mining policy, followed by Asia and Latin America and Caribbean. So for the case of Canada, we see an improvement in 2023 in comparison to 2022. In 2022, when we did the rankings, Canada fell behind the United States, Europe, and Australia, ranking 4th on the policy perception index. But in 2023, Canada improved and became the most attractive region when we only consider policy factors. Next slide, please. So this figure here shows the regional results on the investment attractiveness index. Again, we calculate we do the regional analysis by calculating the median scores of jurisdictions within a particular region. So here is the results on the investment attractiveness index in 2023 and in 2022. So in 2023, when we take into account both policy factors and mineral endowment, we see that the United States was the most attractive region for mining investment, followed by Australia, Canada, Argentina, and Europe. Asia was the least attractive region for mining investment, followed by Latin American, Caribbean, and Africa. In 2022, when we did the rankings, Australia was the most attractive region, followed by Canada and the United States. But in 2023, the United States improved. It displaced Australia and became the most attractive region for mining investment when accounting both policy factors and geology. Next slide, please. So while I just showed you in previous slides that Canada as a whole performs well on policy factors this year, we saw that in 2023, Canada was the most attractive region on mining policy. So this means that Canada as a whole generally performs well on policy factors. While we see that Canada performs well, we also see that there are some Canadian jurisdictions that still underperform on policy factors. One example is British Columbia. British Columbia ranked in the top 20 when we only focused on mineral potential, meaning that in the eyes of investors, this province has a strong mineral endowment. But unfortunately, on policy factors, BC doesn't perform well, and it ranks 32nd out of 86 jurisdictions. So we looked into the data to understand what are the key barriers in the province. And according to the investors, uncertainties surrounding what areas will be protected, uncertainty concerning disputed land claims, and uncertainty concerning environmental regulations are the top three barriers in BC. Consider that, for instance, 68% of the respondents indicated that the uncertainty surrounding protected areas was a deterrent to investment in BC. So Northwest Territories is another Canadian jurisdiction with strong mineral potential. As I showed you, Northwest Territories appeared in the top 10 on the mineral potential index. But again, unfortunately, this territory doesn't perform well on policy factors. It ranks 45th out of 86 jurisdictions on the policy perception index. So there's clearly room for improvement, especially, again, given that this territory has a strong mineral potential. The key barriers are infrastructure, uncertainty concerning protected areas, and uncertainty concerning disputed land claims. Again, we saw that 77% of the respondents for Northwest Territories indicated that infrastructure was a deterrent to investment in this jurisdiction. Yukon is another jurisdiction in Canada with strong mineral potential. Yukon also appeared in the top 10 list on the mineral potential index. But again, we see that on policy factors, it doesn't perform really well, ranking 28th out of 86 jurisdictions. The key barriers in Yukon are similar to those in the Northwest Territories, which are infrastructure, uncertainty concerning disputed land claims, and protected areas. Nova Scotia is also one of those provinces that underperform on policy factors. This province ranks 36 on the policy perception index. And the key barriers there were uncertainty surrounding protected areas, uncertainty concerning environmental regulations, and uncertainty concerning administration and interpretation of existing regulations. Overall, while we see that Canada as a whole performs well in the survey this year, there are still several Canadian jurisdictions that do not perform well on the policy perception index, and there's definitely room for improvement. Next slide, please. So this figure here shows the investment attractiveness in Canada. When we only focus on Canada, Saskatchewan becomes the most attractive jurisdiction, followed by Quebec, Manitoba, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Ontario. In 2023, according to the investors, Nova Scotia was the least attractive jurisdiction in Canada, followed by Nunavut, Alberta, and BC. For the case of Manitoba, we saw a significant improvement in 2023. And as you can see, Manitoba only fell behind Saskatchewan and Quebec in Canada and appeared in the list of top 10 most attractive jurisdictions. Next slide, please. So this figure here shows the investment attractiveness in North America. Again, the red color is associated with Canadian jurisdictions. In North America, Utah is the most attractive jurisdiction for mining investment when we take into account both policy factors and mineral endowment, followed by Nevada, Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Manitoba. Nova Scotia is the least attractive jurisdiction in this region, followed by California, Nunavut, Alberta, Colorado, and Washington. Next, please. This figure shows investment attractiveness in Australia and Oceania. So if you're interested in this region, here is basically the rankings that we got for 2023. So Western Australia was the most attractive jurisdiction, followed by Northern Territory, Queensland, South Australia, and New South Wales. In this region, Solomon Islands was the least attractive jurisdiction, followed by Philippines. Next, please. And this figure shows the investment attractiveness results in Europe. Finland, which also ranked in the top 10 this year, is the most attractive jurisdiction in this region, followed by Sweden, Ireland, and Norway. Portugal is the least attractive jurisdiction in Europe, followed by Bulgaria and Turkey. Next, please. As part of our mining survey, we survey mining executives who have recently applied for an exploration permit to assess the length of the permitting process among jurisdictions. So we asked those respondents who have applied for an exploration permit in the last 2 years to indicate the amount of time they had expected to spend to get an exploration permit. So we used that data basically to do our analysis on permit times, and this figure here shows the results on permit times in Canada. The red color in the figure is associated with the percentage of the respondents who indicated that they could get their permits in 6 months or less. The blue color is associated with the percentage of the respondents who indicated that they needed to wait more than 6 months to get their permits. And as you can see, the results vary in Canada. Quebec is the best performer on permit times in Canada. About 80% of the respondents indicated that they could get their permits, their exploration permits, in 6 months or less. Newfoundland and Labrador also performs well on permit times. About 70% of the respondents indicated that they could get their permits within that timeline. On the other hand, we see that there are some jurisdictions that do not perform well. One example is Yukon. Yukon actually is the worst performer on permit times this year. The majority of the respondents indicated that they needed to wait more than 6 months to get their permits. We also see that Nunavut and Northwest Territories are other jurisdictions where the majority of respondents indicated that they needed to wait more than 6 months to get their necessary permits for exploration activities. So the results vary across Canada, and there's definitely room for improvement in some certain Canadian jurisdictions. Next, please. We also did regional analysis on permit times to better understand how those timelines differ in Canada in comparison to other regions. So this figure here shows the results of permit times. The United States is the best performer on permit times. On average, 80% of the respondents for the United States indicated that they could get their permits in 6 months or less. Canada falls behind the United States but performs better than Australia and Europe on permit times. About 60% of the respondents for Canada on average said that they could get their permits in 6 months or less. And Australia is the worst performer among those regions, with only 40% of the respondents indicating that they could get their permits in 6 months or less. Overall, while Canada performs better than Australia and Europe, we see that we are falling behind the United States, and for sure there is room for improvement for Canadian jurisdictions on the permit times. Next one, please. So all the data that I presented today will be available at no charge at the Fraser Institute website in the coming weeks. As I said earlier, we haven't published these results yet, and we are planning to release the survey results in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, and to get basically the results. But meanwhile, if you need more information about the specific jurisdiction, or if you need additional details, please feel free to reach out to me. And here is my email address, elmira.aliakbari@fraserinstitute.org. You can reach out to me if you need more information or details regarding a specific jurisdiction. Next, please. And that was it. Thanks for your attention. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Elmira. I'm back. If you have questions, I think there's a post on the link where you can put the questions in. So so far we've got one. I guess it's been noted that there was some criticism of the survey, that the results or the number of respondents that you had weren't enough to do a proper, I guess, analysis. I don't know. Did you have any comments on that, Elmira?
Yeah, for sure. So this year, in 2023, when we did the survey, we received 293 responses, and our response rate was nearly 15%, which is good for a survey like this. In order for us to make sure that we receive sufficient responses, we only include those jurisdictions in our survey for which we receive at least 5 responses. Even if for a given jurisdiction we receive a response between 5 to 10, we make a note of that jurisdiction, in our survey, so that we interpret the results with caution. So we have included this basically inclusion criteria in our survey to ensure that we are only including the jurisdictions for which we have sufficient responses. We've seen that our survey gets circulated widely. We have received a lot of positive feedback from the mining industry people, and we have seen a wide coverage of our survey in media. Those are all indications to us that our survey broadly captures the perceptions of investors. And another, again, reason that I'm confident in the results is that there are some jurisdictions in our survey that have consistently performed well or worse. Like for instance, as I said in my presentation, one example is Nevada, or another example is Utah, or even Saskatchewan. We have seen those jurisdictions consistently performing well in our survey. So this is another indication to us that this survey broadly captures the perceptions of investors.
Thank you, Elmira. There is a question here that was posted regarding the regional policy perception. That's slide 12. Can you expand on what Canadian policy changes occurred in 2023, explaining the index score increase?
Yes, so that's a good question. We saw improvement for some Canadian jurisdictions in 2023 in comparison to 2022, and I think that is driving basically the improvement in Canada's score. One example is Manitoba. For the case of Manitoba, we saw that Manitoba has improved significantly on the policy perception index. Another example is Ontario. Ontario also improved and joined the top 10 list on the investment attractiveness index. So in terms of the details, for instance, for those provinces, I looked into the data. For the case of Manitoba, we saw improvement in the area surrounding protected in the area surrounding disputed land claims. In other words, uncertainties surrounding disputed land claims is one area where we saw improvement for Manitoba. Socioeconomic agreements and community development conditions was another area of improvement for Manitoba. Similarly, uncertainty surrounding protected areas also improved again. In Manitoba, we saw a lower percentage of respondents being concerned with that basically policy factor. For Ontario, we also saw improvement. We saw improvement on infrastructure area. Another area of improvement was labor regulations and also taxation. So those were some areas where Ontario improved. So we have detailed basically data in different provinces, which basically shows us how each province has improved or worsened. But my understanding is that Canada has improved because we see some improvement from Manitoba and Ontario. And as I explained, in 2023, on policy perception, there were 4 Canadian jurisdictions on the list of top 10. For instance, Alberta consistently performs well on policy perception index. Or Saskatchewan was another example that Saskatchewan has also generally performed well in our survey in the recent years. I think we also had Newfoundland in the top 10 this year. So, I think those are some explanations behind Canada's improvement on the policy perception index.
Thank you for that. Here's another question. Social acceptability is an essential indicator today for moving forward with an exploration project. Through the various surveys that you have carried out, have you found good practices that certain regions do better than others?
So we don't ask respondents about, I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly or not, but like in terms of policies that we include in our survey, we don't ask about basically social responsibilities or anything similar to that. The policy areas that we cover are the major ones that govern the mining industry. And those, as I showed, include taxation, regulations, trade barriers, etc. So perhaps I cannot really comment on that because that's not something that we have really examined in the survey.
There's no specific questions that relate to that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, here's another question. Does the survey data regarding expected permit times in various jurisdictions make the distinction between underground and open pit projects?
No. The permit time section is basically asking in that section, when we want to do that analysis, we ask respondents or mining executives, those who have applied for an exploration permit over the past 2 years, to indicate how much time they had expected to spend to get their necessary permit. And all we ask about is the exploration permit. We don't ask, for instance, for production permit or anything like that. It's and we don't make a distinction of the permit. It's just about, this is just a measure for us to kind of understand how the timelines vary across jurisdictions, but we do not make any breakdowns or any specific breakdown there.
Okay. Another one here is a perennial complaint from United States miners is that it takes over a decade to permit a mine in the US versus 2 to 3 years in Canada. Is there a reason the question on permitting times only focuses on exploration activities?
So there is no specific reason. So the survey, even when we want to do the mining survey, the idea was to assess basically how government policies affect exploration investment. And that's why even in the permit times, we focus on those permits that are related to exploration activities. Maybe that's a good comment. Maybe we can basically extend our survey to consider different form of permits, like, for instance, a permit that is required to develop a mine. But there is no specific reason. We have only focused on exploration permits, and we wanted to get a sense of how timelines differ among jurisdictions. But that's a good comment. We can consider basically extending that analysis to other permits.
Here's what I'm not sure you can really answer, but how can the length of time in securing permits be shortened? Is there any observations you can make about the policy decisions and so forth that relate to that?
That's a good question, but that's not something that I can really answer based on our survey. We do not really know what the reasons behind these results are. We simply ask mining investors to indicate how much time they expected to spend to get the necessary permits. And this is what we have been told. In terms of the reasons behind it, we leave that up to the governments in different jurisdictions to figure out what's really driving these results and how they can improve their jurisdictions.
I'm going to ask one final question here that's come in, and I sort of wanted to ask this as well. As you know, the PDAC conference is coming up starting Sunday. It's traditionally you released your report around this time, and we're all looking forward to seeing that full report. You are going to get, governments focus on this report. You're going to get governments that are probably going to want to meet with you when they're here in town and saying, why did we get a bad rating? Why, what? And I think your response normally is, well, we don't make it up. It's based on a survey. So it's what people tell us about your jurisdiction. But anyway, so here's the question that came in that was posted is there a copy of the report that includes the detailed figures and results beyond the charts available in the handout? Where can that be found? So,
yes. Yes, when we release the results, we always provide all detailed tables on our website. You can, if, for instance, the 2022 version of the mining survey is already out. You can find it on our website. But the 2023 version that I just presented, it's not on the website yet. We are going to release this in the coming weeks. I don't know the exact release date, but stay tuned. You can have full access to the data. But if now, for instance, if you need more information now, and you need more details about a specific question, you can reach out to us and I'll be more than happy to provide more details. But again, alternatively, you can wait a bit longer till we release the survey, and you will have access to all the detailed information on by going to our website.
So those of us that attended this today have that the inside information with the results. Which this PowerPoint is very useful information. We have something that other people don't have, is what you're telling us.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happening.
So Elmira, with that, I think we'll end it now. I want to thank all the participants that have joined us today. There is a slide there in front of you with a survey we'd ask you to complete. Our next PDAC session will be taking place in a few hours, actually, at 1400 Eastern Time or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And the topic will be artificial intelligence, human resources, and other legal issues. That's our labor and employment group that'll be putting that one on. It should be a great session. And you can sign up for any of the upcoming webinars through the virtual calendar, which is below I think it's on your screen, or by visiting the Fasken Institute section of fasken.com. Like all of the sessions are set out there. And we hope you can join us for the next session. And for the ones that are coming up later this week, we have, I think, 5 more after today or 4 more after today this week, and then 7, which are hybrid sessions next week. They're live at our office, but you can also access them online. Once again, thank you very much, Elmira, for the fantastic presentation. And that's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.